Hi, I'm Adam Meyer of Mill City Lutherie in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we've got another really nice vintage guitar here. This is a 1957 Gretsch 6120. It is all original, other than there may have been like setups and things like that done, but otherwise this guitar has not been altered. And I'm going to be doing a neck reset on this. I've already posted a video of a 1959 Gretsch 6120 get a neck reset. That was owned by somebody quite notable. But since then, I have a much nicer camera for shooting video, and I'm also a lot better at editing video, so why not just make a much nicer video? And also, I just kind of like to, for my own records, record some of these jobs that come through. There have been so many things over the years that I've worked on that I did not record them, or it was at a previous job or whatever. It'd be nice to just have that recorded for posterity, just something to kind of look back on. And every now and then you kind of need to go back and review, like, take that neck off, what did it look like inside, and for other people's record, I might post videos of the same neck reset being done over and over. Well, each dovetail is a different shape. So some other person kind of trying to look ahead, do a job on a certain guitar, they can find someone else's video and check it and be like, oh, it's measured that way, so I know, you know what to expect going into the job. So we'll get a closer look at what's going on with this guitar and get the job underway. Just a quick little extra about this guitar, just because the son who owns it knows the story. It was traded even up for a 1957 Les Paul Gold Top. Just an even trade. It was a couple years after both guitars were bought new. The owner of this Gretsch 6120 was originally bought that Les Paul brand new, traded it to the guy who owned this 6120 brand new. And here's some pictures of the guitars being played back in the day. Alright, the guitar is in tune. Truss rod is adjusted correctly. And yeah, this is laying on its back, but just so you have an idea what we're talking about with the action here. You can see that we are really high there. That's like almost 4/32. And you're not able to lower that saddle anymore at all. So we are stuck with high action. Really the only thing we can do is take the neck off and do a neck reset. But adding to that, this neck is actually starting to come loose down here. So that's a big culprit to why this has come forward just as much as it has. I got the guitar flipped over so you can see what's going on here. We've got gap through a lot of this right here on the back. That is supposed to be flush. So that's just a sign the neck has come loose over time. Probably wasn't fit very well at the factory. There will be a bolt hidden behind this plug here. We'll get that taken out first of all before taking the neck off, because we won't be able to get the neck off with that in the way. So there's going to be a dovetail neck joint inside here, and what we want to do is get my heating needle behind the dovetail so I can heat up the joint in there, get the glue to loosen up. And that's most commonly this fret comes out, and you drill a couple holes down in there. I use some hot foam cutting knives. It's what I've come to like over the years. And usually this neck is tipped forward enough where we're not able to see any light coming through underneath the tongue, but usually you can kind of get see a little light coming through the gap there, and that would show you where the back of the dovetail is. But this one has tipped forward enough, this has come down enough where we can't see that. But I know it's there because I've done other ones of these. There's another issue here. You can see that the dog ear on the peg head has come loose. Dog ear is, you have your main part of the neck, these pieces of wood here, Then to make the full peg head, you glue on a couple more pieces on the outside. Those are called dog ears. And this one has come loose. So I'm going to get this apart, get these tuners off, and see how flexible this is. Hopefully we can get it to flex back shut and get some glue in there and it'll hold. Worst case scenario, do like a little bit of filler and some color touch up because we don't want that to come apart. And right now it's getting really close to breaking off. Alright, even as I'm taking the strings off, I'm finding things like these bushings are loose, the tuner is loose from the peg head, so we're going to be going through making sure all these are put in place. This is pretty darn close, so I'll probably just, dot the sides of this with a little bit of glue when I'm tending to other things and just press it into place, and that should take up the gap and keep it all nice and snug. Alright, so here we have our plug that is covering the neck bolt. I'm trying to show this through you through my magnifying light here. Sorry if there's any glare. But there's finish on top of it. Even though I'm going to be spraying some touch-up on this when I'm close to done, I still don't want to pull this out and pull any finish from the surrounding area. Take a really fresh razor blade. I'm more comfortable using one of these than an X-Acto knife for situations like this. Really, I'm just scoring the edge there. It's lacquer, so it wants to shrink in on the edges, so it's easy to find where the edge is. There's also a little bit of color sprayed on top of this. I can see where the seam is, but there's color on top of it, so I'll probably end up having a more perfect circle than the original. Alright, so the bolt is right behind there. It is not recessed very far. I'm just going to try and grind away enough of this where I'll be able to pull the bolt out, and then the rest of the plug I'm going to kind of scrape that out by hand. Take a look in there. I'm just getting to it. This is actually deeper than the other ones I've done before. Right along where the blade of the X-Acto knife is going. That's the flathead part of the bolt. So we've got just a little bit more to clean off of that. And I'll try getting it out of there. I'm going to get close to the outer edge of the plug. The bolt shouldn't be that size, but it'd be close to it. So just kind of work slowly until I get all the way there. Alright, I have this opened up enough where the hole's larger than the head of the screw. And this one is actually turning nicely. Should be able to get this out without heating it up. Yep. This one's turning nice and free. There you go. Just a big flathead screw in there. Double back a little bit to fit a drill bit in. I'm going to be using a longer bit, but since we've got the tongue over here, I'm just going to kind of use a little smaller bit, see if I can feel where that gap is back here. Yep, right there. That was pretty easy. I'm gonna do it both sides. And use a little tape, make sure I don't go too far, but I'll be going down in. The flutes on the bit do not go all the way up the bit. So I'm going to drill down a little bit, pull out the dust, drill in a little bit further, pull out the dust. So my preferred method of removing the neck is to use these hot wire foam cutting needles. I think that's really all you call them. Then once we have the hole drilled into the dovetail, you use syringe, a little bit of water. But on this one you gotta be careful, the neck joint is already loose, so I'm not gonna be adding a lot of water, just a little bit at a time. Keep cycling those needles in and out of the holes I drilled here. As you can see, it just fits right down in. Be able to hear it steaming, but I don't want any water to run out underneath the fingerboard tongue or out the bottom of the neck joint. So if it does, it's not doing anything, and I'm potentially getting water in places that I don't want it to be going. So just a little bit at a time. This is going to be a kind of a, shall we say, a busier neck removal than, let's say, a nicely sealed up marten neck joint where you can just put your water in, put the needles in, and just kind of wait. This one, you got to stay active with it. While the neck is off, I want to get this glued back together, the dog ear here, as I showed before. And I want to make sure I've got a clean glue surface, or as clean as possible. I'll be using hide glue when I'm ready to clamp this together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little hot water down there and kind of rub my feeler gauge back and forth, just try and get any glue to come out as much as possible. I'll let it dry because I don't want it to glue up yet. But I'll be taking some of my moldable plastic, as you can see here, and kind of two tasks at once. I'm going to use the hot water that is melting the plastic to get this glue out, clean this out, but at the same time, I'll use create some clamping cauls for on the side of the peg head. That way I have perfectly even clamping pressure on both sides. So the last thing you want is to put any marks in the side of this peg head. I'm just taking some of those soft pieces, kind of press them into the side of the peg head. I'm not using a lot of force, I mean it's soft, and I'll just sit here for a minute or so, let the plastic cool off, and it'll harden. And as you can see, we end up making perfectly shaped clamping caul. So I've been moistening this and clamping it, and it's a small crack, but it seems like it improved a little bit. I don't think it's going to close up anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and try and give this a shot at getting glued up. I've got a real thin feeler gauge here that I can get all the way down in the crack. So I'll be using this to kind of press the glue down in there. And you can see I've got plenty of space. It's a little tighter up here than the rest. But I'm going to use hide glue. If this doesn't hold, it's not that big of a deal then. Hide glue, I should be able to get some hot water in there. I can kind of wash it out. I did what I can to, with the water before, try and clean up what's in there, because you can't glue dirty surfaces together with wood glue or hide glue or anything like that. You'd have to use something like epoxy, and I'm just not going to touch this guitar with epoxy. So I'll be loading up, got the little warmer over here, some hide glue in a small jar inside of another jar. I'll be loading it up in a syringe, feed it down in there, work it down with the feeler gauge and get it all clamped up. While I still have the neck off, I'm going to do one little extra step. I don't know if anybody else does it or not, but it's something that kind of bothers me, you know, with Stratocasters, Telecasters, any type of bolt-on neck. This isn't a bolt-on neck, but Gretsch adds a bolt. That little dot there, there's a bolt hidden behind there. You saw me take it out earlier, and the thing that bothers me is people will drill for the threads to bite into the wood of the neck heel as well as the neck block. If it was a a bolt-on neck, a Stratocaster, Telecaster, whatever, you want the bolt to slide through the body and only grab the neck. So you get the full force of the screw, the flutes pulling that neck down into the body. You don't want any of that force being absorbed by the body wood. Or in this situation, we're going in the reverse. You don't want the threads of the screw catching here. You want the full force or torque, whatever it would be, of the screw to actually be pulling the neck into the neck block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a couple drill bits, step up in size until I'm drilling a hole free through the neck block. This bolt will slide through. If it catches just slightly, that's fine, because if it's just barely catching on the edges, that's not going to be enough to hold up the pressure from this screw. Same thing goes. Situation like this, I don't want to damage anything, so I'm going to start off small. That size slides right through. This size just starts to catch, so I'm going to start here, even though I know this is too small. And then I will work my way up in sizes. Double check with the bolt. This is still too tight. That's going to thread in. And having the hole through there already, the drill bit will follow where it's going, so this is pretty easy to do. There we go. Just right. It's just sliding through. I can feel the flutes on the screw just dragging on the hole a little bit. So that is just right. All right, take a look at this neck bolt here. It's just a regular screw. Got a flat bottom to the head. Now the hole in here, if I was able to, get that up for you to be able to see, it was drilled with just a normal type of drill bit. It's angled, and it creates an angled bottom in there. Well, this isn't going to sit nice and flush down in there. It's going to, it's going to sit on a tapered edge, and only the edge of this head is going to have any pressure. So what I'm going to do, two reasons. This doesn't fit in very far. See that? It's just shy of the surface, and I need to put a little plug over that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what's called a Forstner bit. These drill a flat bottomed hole. They have a little point in the middle, but then otherwise these bits, they cut an outside circle first and then a flat part through the middle. I'm just going to fit this in here, just give it a couple turns, create a nice little flat spot in there for this to fit nice, and that also will help create more force to hold this neck in place. There, that's even better. That's almost what would the head of the screw would rest against. Let's see if I can get a nice close-up of that. There you go. Nice flat area for the bolt to rest against. Slides in. Alright, time to correct the neck angle on this. And if you've been watching my videos, I'm sure other people do it the same way as me. I know there are other people that do it different ways, but this is just the way I've come to like doing it. I take a piece of tape, lay it along the edge to add just a little bit more angle. If you do it enough times, you have an idea about how much you should be taking off that first round. You don't want to take too much off, because if you go too far, you can't back up. So if you know, let's say you need to take that much off, take just a little bit less the first time, and then go back a second time to get it refined. Also, like I've mentioned before, I've really liked using these sanding sticks now. Over the years, I've used chisels and files to do this, but I find that these they work quickly because you got a nice coarse grit. Plus, it's less likely to chip up the finish. You're not going to slip. There's no danger of poking your hand or anything. Plus, you don't need to sit around and sharpen your files each time you have a job come in. So, moving on to this, you've seen it before, but it's what I do. And follow up with a pretty standard step of gotta get the seam to fit really well. So just a little strip of sandpaper, hold the neck in place, slide it out. Our surfaces here, like the neck, isn't absolutely perfectly flat. If there is a little hump or something, I'll sand that out, but you still might have slight variations. So you just fit a little sandpaper in here and let that follow whatever little ripples and bumps to help make a finely honed edge between the two surfaces. Alright, now I have the neck angle established. I've cleaned up the edges here. Everything fits really well. You've got to get it so that it fits nice and secure. So I've got a couple pieces of maple here, come from the same piece of wood, so they're the same thickness. They just get glued onto the dovetail here. I'll let that set overnight, and then the process go in and I sand these down ever so slightly while they're on here till I get it that nice full fit. This is kind of the fit that we want. We want it to go all the way down where we're not having to force it real hard, but then once it's in there, it does not wiggle loose at all. All the way down. There is no moving this around. It's perfect fit. As perfect as you can get by doing it by hand. We're sealed up all the way around. So one more time, stringing it up on the jig just to make sure that my angles and everything are correct still, and then we do it for real with the glue. I'm just taking some of the plastic that I used for clamping the peg head together, just melting it down again. Get this out of the water. Quite soft. It's still maybe a little bit too warm to put against the nitrocellulose, so I'll just let it cool off a little bit in my hand. I put a little piece of tape over the hole here so that it doesn't stick down in there, because I don't want to clamp this together and then due to the shape the caul ends up sticking down in that hole. Use a block to make sure I have a nice flat clamping surface. Final dry run. Got the shims glued in. No actual glue in the neck joint right now, but we've got it all propped up here in my neck, or my clamping jig, whatever you want to call it, and we've got the moldable plastic caul holding everything in place. You can put on 2 strings and make sure that we've got appropriate action, that the bridge, the saddle is a nice height, getting appropriate action here. And also that I am lined up, that the strings aren't one way or the other off the neck. Everything's looking great, so it's time to do this for real. For this job, it definitely had hide glue in it. I'm going to follow through with that. It comes crystals like this. Let it heat up in some warm water. Then I'll Now moving on to get this finished off. We've got to get the plug taken care of, and I'm going to put this bolt back in. Fits in, goes, like I showed you before, goes through the heel, and we're going to screw it into the block. Really important to do it this way. Here you have the plug I made. Just using this type of plug cutter, a thin sheet of walnut just to cut it out. Fits in just right. So I'm just put a little piece of painter's tape down. I'm going to cut out a circle here. Don't have perfect edges here for the original dot, but that's pretty good. Just want to make sure I don't overspray too much. Being a little imprecise in my measuring here, which not a big deal, and I'm making much more than I actually need, but I've just kind of learned that, you know, it's nice to have extra, and just, you know, it's better to have extra, so if you run into any problems, or if I'm spraying it on and it's either not dark enough, or if it's too dark, I can adjust. So I'm just going to simply use, you know, orange stain. I'm going to add a couple drops to this, see what we get. That's looking pretty good. Maybe make it just a touch darker, so that I'm not having to spray as many coats to get the plug to look right. It's looks a little medium to medium dark orange there. So we're going to go with this and get a couple coats on, and hopefully that should be just fine. Alright, time to buff this out. If I didn't explain it before, the idea is, you know, I get the nice defined brown circle there over the plug, spray some aged lacquer, the first coat, then clear on top, because I need to sand and buff it. If I add, you know, that little bit of color I add to the lacquer to make it look aged, the more coats I spray on, the darker it gets. But also, if I don't spray clear on top of it, if I sand on it, I sand away the color. So that's the reason for that initial coat is aged, then it's just straight clear, no color added or anything. That way I can, you know, sand this back and get a nice even feel. As you saw, I just concentrated the airbrush here, but we do have a little bit of kind of misty overspray on the sides. It's just gonna very fine grit sandpaper. The heel cap here, I could almost leave that alone, but I'll probably just a couple swipes. And depending on how it goes, I may just use a little bit of polish and hand polish this to get a shine, because this is nitrocellulose from the 1950s. It's not super shiny. It's not supposed to be super shiny because it's old, and that's just not the kind of finish it is. So I may just hand buff this one. Sometimes I use my Dremel with a little buffing wheel, but this one, I'm probably just going to do the hand buff. That's really all I'm doing for buffing. I don't know if you even call it buffing, but just a soft pad with a little polish on it. It's more of a rubbing compound, not a regular guitar polish. And just it's coming out maybe just a touch shinier than the finish around it, but then, you know, like up here, if this is duller, I'll just kind of buff out a little further and get everything to. A little bit of a sidetrack here. We're getting a lot of hum when switching to the neck pickup, and what has happened is this is a single conductor wire. What we have is right here, I'll point to it, this is the hot wire. Inside this attaches to the coil wire, which goes inside here, but underneath this gray plastic there is a braid of wire that surrounds this white wire. That's the ground. It has come loose. It gets soldered on here as you stick the white wire through. So I'm going to have to take this apart and get that ground connected again. I'm going to see if I can suck a little bit of the solder off the hot connection here. Go. Magnet makes it a little. There you go. See? So I've cleaned off the hot end of the coil here. Got a nice exposed wire, and the ground is going to this little cylinder here, which I'll be soldering to. Before I put this all together and install it in the guitar, definitely I want to double check on something this old that we still have good signal here. And yep, nice and strong. So time to get the hook up. So I'll get this gray cut back and you can see what was going on there. So this is the idea. Got our ground, and I'll trim that back for the hot. But the idea is it slips through there. Got a little black tape there holding up a. There we go. We'll slide through. This connects there again. I'll put the little insulation on it, and the ground here will solder where all this solder is before we see that. Alright, got this prepped to put it back together. I've already tinned the hot and the ground on this, and I've also stripped back this wire a little bit. It's a little fabric insulated wire that is connected to the hot inside. Got a little piece of electrical tape here that helps prevent things from touching. I gotta get around that. Could probably just peel it off and put it back on, but just slide this through, and this slides up where the braided ground. I can just resolder that on here, and get these hots twisted together a little bit. I don't have as much as when it was new. Try and hold this with the forceps. Just get a little bit of something there. Got that good. There we go. Alright, before I go through all the work of putting all this back in, I've got the switch out so I can test this. I'm going to go from hot to ground on the switch. There we go, we've got our full reading again. And I got the hot on the switch. Flip to ground. Yep, we got it all working. You can also test this if you watch playing my videos, use a little tuning fork. You can do that as well. But now we gotta get the little insulation back on. Is this little tube they slide over. Okay, so I want to kind of hide that I've been soldering inside this guitar. I mean, it's an old guitar, parts get replaced and stuff, but being that this is pretty much close to a completely original 1957 6120, want to keep things as original as possible, or at least looking it. Not part of the video, but this was the original toggle switch. The pin that goes through here, it came slid out from there. I tried getting it pressed back into place, but it's just not working. This is what was replaced in it. This is like something out of an Epiphone. If you were watching before, got a new full-sized Switchcraft switch back in there, just to kind of keep parts authentic. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some patina here. This is used for making stained glass. All the lead lining, or I forget what it's called around there, but you can use this and add color to the solder on there. Solder will gray and turn dull over time. If you'll, I don't know if you can zoom in on this, you can see some of these connections are pretty dull. Some are real shiny from when it was disconnected before. But what I'm going to do is going to take some water and just a little bit of this patina, and I'll mix this together to try and dull the solder connections that I just did on this pickup, to kind of make it really discreet that I was doing anything with the pickup. Adding just a little bit. I don't have any precise measurements. Some guitars, it's real subtle. Some guitars, you need to do it pretty strong. To definitely wear glasses because this is an acid. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's subtle. I'm just, when a solder joint is fresh, it's like got a mirror shine. I'm just knocking it back so that it isn't shiny and glossy. And all right, now I always put a drop cloth over a guitar, got an extra towel and everything. We're dealing with an acid here. I don't know what this would do to the finish or anything, any dropped on it, but anybody watching this, I do not, don't do what I do or whatever. Whatever disclaimer, don't come blaming it at me if you try and do this yourself and you're not adequately careful about it. So I'm going to go after this ground connection on the pickup here. A little Q-tip. And just, it's subtle. Hopefully my camera can pick it up. Now that looks nice and old. Here's the toggle switch that I put in earlier. It wasn't really a part of the neck reset or any of the other things, but we're joining it into the video now. And, just for giggles, I'll go ahead and add a little on here as well. Doesn't take a lot, just rub it on a little bit. Make sure you're not dripping anywhere. Doesn't have to be like a perfectly consistent coverage, because if you ever look at really old electronics, the solder isn't always perfectly uniform. There you go. It's a new switch, but it looks like it's, for the most part, it looks kind of like it's been in there for a long time. Alright, there you go, a 1957 Gretsch 6120. Almost completely original. If only we could get that original toggle switch put back in, but it's just too damaged. Not going to be able to do that. But we now have the correct part in it. We've got the neck reset taken care of. pretty much any guitar like this, or like a regular Dreadnought flat top acoustic, it's going to need a neck reset at some point, unless it just never had any strings put on it. So the idea that the neck reset has been done is not a hit against the collectability of this guitar. As long as you really focus your finish touch up just to this spot, not really a big deal. If I were to have sprayed a lot of finish on this or refinished it altogether, then that becomes an issue. But we've got so much here that is original. It's in great condition. There are some dings on the neck, so I try to make sure that this spot that I sprayed touch up on, kind of, the idea is don't make it look too new. Just have it kind of blend in, that if somebody were to take this to like a vintage guitar shop and they're going to look it over, you can check with the black light. You're only going to see a little touch up here, which that's all it is. It's just focused right there. Not a big deal. Peg head repair, yeah, that's holding real well. That turned out really nice. Didn't do any finish touch up on that. It just looks like the seam is kind of showing. So not a big issue there. Turned out really nice. Didn't have to do anything major. So I get this back to the owner. So if you have any comments about this project, you can always leave it below the video, or you can contact me directly. My contact information is in the About section of my channel, and we'll see you next time.